Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Ananya Bhattacharjee. Today we are going to do a module from the paper titled Women, Conflict and Militarization. Module is titled Women in Terrorist Groups, Violating Conventional Notions of Gender and Power. In this module, we are going to discuss how the traditional ideas related to gender and power can be subverted if we look at women's participation in various terrorist groups. Not only have these women been a part of such organizations, but they have left an indelible mark and have proved themselves to be equal with their male counterparts. Let us look at some of the definitions on terrorism and the various ideas that they entail. The word terrorism was coined during the French Revolution's reign of terror. It was a term used by the establishment to describe the activities of the revolutionaries. There is at present no universally accepted legal term of the definition of terrorism. However, studies have identified more than 200 definitions. Yasser Arafat, late chairman of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, in a 1974 speech before the United Nations said, and I quote, "One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter," unquote.
بواقع عالمي ما زال يسوده الاضطراب والظلم والاضطهاد العنصري والاستغلال، وما زال مهددا بالكوارث الاقتصادية والحروب والأزمات. ما زالت شعوب كثيرة منها زيمبابوي وناميبيا وجنوب إفريقيا وفلسطين وغيرها ضحية للعدوان والقهر والبطش. وتشهد تلك المناطق من العالم صراعا مسلحا فرضته قوى الاستعمار والتمييز العنصري ظلما وإرهابا، فاضطرت الشعوب المضطهدة إلى التصدي له، وكان تصديها عادلا ومشروعا.
Terrorism uses violence for several reasons, be it political, social, or ideological.
Strong Naxalite insurgency reaches from northern to southern India, in an area known as the Red Corridor. It contains some of India's most underdeveloped land and its poorest people.
ये काम मतलब यहाँ अपना जनता का कामकाज में शामिल होना, कृषि में वो काम भी शामिल होता है प्लाटून। नहीं तो दुश्मन आ रहा करके खबर सुन के दुश्मन के साथ लड़ने के लिए उधर भी जाना पड़ता।
For safety, the rebels never stay in one place for long. Samaya and his platoon soon continue their trek to a local Maoist headquarters, walking for hours through dense and hostile forest. Their detailed knowledge of the jungle enables them to avoid police patrols. This camp is home to about 60 rebels. The soldiers salute each other with Lal Salam, the red salute. These young men and women, most no older than 24, are considered terrorists by India's government. Many have already killed for their cause. Samaya goes ahead to secure a safe exit for the rest of the group.
वो सिग्नल वो 2 जन के भेज दे अभी भेजते वहां से करके वो कुछ नहीं बोल के और सिग्नल देता फिर सकी निकाल उठा मेरे में जम्मे वो अरे जम्मे और सुधा ना मेरे नेट पे ये और सुधा नहीं ले इधर में रहना
The rebels' agility in the jungle is a clear advantage.
इधर में और सुधा है ना इधर बोर मंतोर बाता इन्हें बोरे मंतोर या बाता खावाते गंज मंजू इधर मंजूरी सी कौन सा दाय न मना इधर मेरे नहीं हो
The Indian government hopes to regain control. But so far, it's the rebels who've been gaining momentum, and their determination is undeterred.
Victims of terrorists are usually civilians or iconic symbols, and their objective is to realize publicity for a group, cause, or individual. The meaning of terrorism is most often socially constructed. In its popular understanding of the term terrorism, usually refers to an act that is evil, wrong, illegitimate, illegal, and a crime. Acts characterized as terrorist in nature can occur both in conflict and peacetime. They may constitute crimes in domestic and international law, and they are motivated by a complex matrix of reasons and causes. Their characterization can also depend upon the person or institution that is using the label. And of course, it can change over time. To give 2 striking examples, the list of the most wanted terrorists kept by the United Nations featured Nelson Mandela and Yasser Arafat, both of whom were subsequently conferred with the Nobel Peace Prize, an evidence that is a highly political and controversial issue. Traditionally, women have been associated with nurturing, peacemaking, housemaking, mothering, and so on. In various communities, the conventions that women follow are that of marriage and motherhood, shame, honor, purity, impurity controls a woman's life. Age and gender also decides how and when a woman should interact with men. Women are expected to be devoted, self-sacrificing, all-giving mothers. The honor of family and preservation of class and caste boundaries also depends upon the behavior of a woman. In the last few decades, women have entered various institutions and workforces that had earlier been an exclusive domain of the male. Women, however, are still associated with professions like nursing, housekeeping, teaching, cooking, and so on. These professions conform to the qualities that are mostly seen as the ideals of femininity. The conventional notions of gender and power are violated when we analyze the participation of women in terrorism. Women are no longer represented as pure, innocent victims and peaceful, which are considered to be the common traits of a female. Women terrorists subvert gender stereotypes, since they shed the role of a typical woman who is the preserver of peace. Of course, within the family and the society at large. And on the contrary, they become a threat. Violence, whether public or private, was earlier seen as being perpetrated by men on women. The scenario has, however, changed, and women do not remain just a victim, they are also seen as perpetrators of violence. The relationship between women and violence has changed over time, and the role that women play in terrorist activities are quite active. Women participating in various terrorist groups subvert the gendered stereotypes, blurring the boundaries between the victims and the perpetrators. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe 2005 states, and I quote, "A woman is often perceived as a victim of violence or of society, as widows or mothers, or as passive supporters, part of a support network. She symbolizes the guardian of tradition, a symbol of motherhood and life. How can she then, seemingly contradictory to this, give her life to violence and death?" Unquote. Many women seek gender equality or emancipation through terrorist activities because they believe that their liberation is possible only through their association with such terrorist groups. Most of them become a part of the domestic terrorist organization, since such groups provide a better scope for meeting their needs and bringing about a change in the hierarchical order. The passive role that women are often assigned in the society is subverted when it comes to terrorist activities. Women assume a more active and important role in terrorist organizations. Various male leaders of terrorist groups view women as being more powerful or a more potential threat towards the society. Some examples of women terrorists show that women can be potentially more dangerous than their male counterparts. Ja Bethke Stein in Women and War rightly referred to these women as the ferocious few who have actually fought rather than served in auxiliary services, support and non-combatant duties. Women in the Radical Basque National Organization (ETA) were more successful, as the traditional stereotype of women as non-terrorist enabled them to become more effective than their male counterpart. As more women began participating on the same level as men, their male comrades began to change their view and their own stereotypical ideas on women. Sally Jones, who now refers to herself as Sakina Hussain, is a mother of two and married to Junaid Hussain, a British ISIS computer hacker. Jones would frequently call for violent attacks on Christians in the USA and UK. In August 2014, she wrote on Twitter, and I quote, "You all need beheading with a nice blunt knife," unquote. She helps to recruit people in the ISIS. There are various movements and groups in which women have participated as terrorists. Since the 18th century, some of the well-known organizations that women are associated with include Narodnaya Volia, LTTE, People's Will, Black September, Black Widow, and of course there are some contemporary examples or contemporary groups in which women play their part as terrorists. In India, women terrorists have been playing a significant role in conducting terrorist attacks. The Maoists recruit a large number of women, and these women are involved in carrying out attacks against the Indian army, as well as playing support roles. One of the most prominent Maoist leader is Kursenga Motibai alias Radhakka. She is the first woman in Andhra Pradesh to work for the Maoists and was underground for almost 28 years. Although Maoists underplay women's involvement into active terrorist activities, women occupy leadership positions, and the examples we have are that of Radhakka and Anuradha Gandhi, a member of the Apex and Central Committee. And these are, of course, examples that contradicts the traditional view that women are not an active part of terrorism. An internal document from the Communist Party of India states, "Our work in the women's front is still far from satisfactory. Recruitment in many states is poor. Selection, gradation, promotion of the women cadres is still not according to a systematic plan. And our efforts are inadequate given the immense potential and the necessity of building the women's movement and recruiting cadres and promoting leadership from the women. The trend of patriarchy is acting as a strong deterrent to our efforts in this regard." There is a considerable rise in the number of women cadres since the late 1990s. At present, almost 40% of the Maoists are women, mostly belonging to rural and tribal India, and most of the fighters are well educated. To cite an example, we can refer to Anuradha Gandhi, who has been a university lecturer in the Department of Sociology. While she died of cerebral malaria, she was the leader of All India's Women's Movement and the sole member of the Central Committee. Talking of the reasons behind women joining the Maoists, researchers have found that most of them joined the group due to desperation and exploitation at the hands of some powerful people of the village. Examples can be cited of two girls from different villages as instances to show what led these girls to join the Maoist ranks. A young tribal girl in Karimnagar district was seen crying in the fields by a Maoist group. The girl was consoled and taken away by this group, who later herself became a Maoist. Another girl from Patarudraram village ran away from her family in order to save herself from a forced marriage. The Maoists took advantage of the situation, consoled her, and recruited her in their own group. The Maoists seems to have taken certain initiatives to promote and to improve the condition of women, and they ensured them as partners in the new democratic revolution called the NDR. Equal rights to women from agriculture labor and poor peasantry background in the distribution of land. Equal rights to women in hereditary and self-earned property to women from well-to-do families. Equal wages for equal work. Eradicate physical exploitation of women and completely eradicate prostitution. Eradicate atrocities on women and severely punish the culprit. Put an end to the dowry system, put an end to the ostentatious weddings, and demand the encouragement of simple intercaste marriages. 50% reservation for women in government jobs. Struggle for free compulsory education for girls and co-education institutions. Fight against discrimination of girls in the education system. Fight against gender discrimination tests and female feticide. Fight against discrimination between young girls and boys. Fight against religious practices that are humiliating to women. Fight against personal law. Finally, fight against derogatory representation of women in all forms, including in the media. Moreover, the Maoists have also decided different long-term tasks that the women's movement would undertake after the creation of the new democratic revolution. This includes full partnership for women in social production, collective role in household activities, women to participate in politics and jointly exercise political authority, personal wealth or property to be converted into collective wealth or property and struggle for an end to patriarchy, abolish private family business and establish community production and ownership, establish fraternal relationship and support women's movement across the world. There are examples of women joining the Maoists belonging to the same family. Sisters from a single family are known to have joined the group due to some revolutionary causes. A researcher gives an interesting example of a girl who was born underground in the Maoist group. Her parents met while they were working together in the underground, got married, and she was born. She received her education from schools that were controlled by the welfare department of the government, and eventually she also became a Maoist. Women are largely drawn towards this organization due to its various efforts in eradicating injustices towards women, such as patriarchy, forced marriages, and marriages among cousins. Some women joined underground due to personal reasons, social milieu, influence of family members, and so on. Most of them felt an urgent need to bring about a change in the society and thus stay connected with the Maoists for rebellion. So, when women terrorists are captured by the armed forces, they show no mercy, and the society at large consider women as being aberrant, and therefore there is no public outcry against the inhuman treatment that is meted out to the women terrorists. Some terrorist organizations where women are involved are FARC, EA, Irish Republican Army, Shining Path, and many more. The general perception that women are passive and not involved with any terror group, particularly the extreme ones, continues. Rather, women's role in countering the radicalization process is what is stressed. But women's association with terror is an old one. One of the oldest organizations that is that of the Black Widows from erstwhile Russia. Fact of the matter is that more and more women are joining terror groups, and they are often considered as threat because the conventional view on women do not recognize them in the role of a terrorist. Thus, they are able to access those places which their male counterparts are not able to reach. So, such a position becomes an advantage when it's a women terrorist who explores those places. Some evidences suggest that the reasons women join any terrorist group is not different from that of men. And this include inequality, the sense of a cause, religion, frustration, threats, and adventure that involves the risk of life and death. The perception of women as essentially non-violent informs much of the attitude of the security forces, a perception that is being forced to change in the face of a mounting evidence to the contrary. The impulse of security persons to describe these women as aberrant caters to and reinforces their conventional image of women. Unfortunately, this perception not only discourages the in-depth study of the women themselves, what motivates them, how and why they became radicalized, etc., but also leads them to ignore the wider security issues. On the other hand, the same perception provides scope to the terrorists to cash in on the image and exploit it to their advantages. In fact, this is one of the primary reasons why terrorist organizations have been recruiting female to a great number. Some figures come as a shock. For instance, in the Islamic State group known as the ISIS, approximately 63 of the estimated 350 French nationals believed to be with the group are women, which is almost close to 20%. They commit violence against other women, enforcing female morality codes that require modest dress and sex segregation. They operate at checkpoints and conduct home raids. They are also reportedly recruiters, trainers, female suicide bombers, homemakers, fundraisers, propagandists, and so on. They also help sanitize the group's image by posting photos of themselves drinking milkshakes on Instagram and writing chatty, light-hearted tweets. The case of Wafa Idris, a suicide bomber from Palestine, was one of the first that caught the attention of the world press.
In the morning of January 27, 2002, several hundred women are invited to his headquarters in Ramallah.
وحارسة نارنا الدائمة التي حمت هذا الوجود الفلسطيني مشعب الجبارين، فكانت القائدة الصلبة والقوية والأمينة لشعب الجبارين، لشعب الجبارين.
That same afternoon, Wafa Idris, a 26-year-old Palestinian woman, blows herself up in Jerusalem. Coincidence or a deliberate political act? In the beginning, even Arafat and his supporters are reluctant to claim responsibility for the attack, but when there is an overwhelming positive reaction, the Fatah, Arafat's organization, claims Wafa Idris as their own. During a visit to Wafa Idris's mother in her home in the El Amari refugee camp in Ramallah, on the surface, she seems proud of her daughter.
We're proud she gave her life for her homeland, for Palestine. We knew nothing about it. She'd spoken to no one. My daughter saw too much violence and tragedy when she was working for the Red Crescent. She saw what the Jews had done to us. She was offered money, but she refused. She worked voluntarily for the Red Crescent. Her brothers would say to her, "And what's more, you're working for nothing." And she'd reply, "I'm doing it for our homeland of Palestine."
The Israeli authorities found it difficult to come to terms with the idea that it is a woman who is doing such a heinous act. So they projected her as mentally disturbed. But the Arab public hailed her as a martyr. Wafa Idris was the first suicide bomber in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. At the time of her death, Idris was a 28-year-old, divorced Red Crescent volunteer. She lived in the Amari refugee camp in Ramallah. Ayat al-Akras was the third and youngest who at the age of 18 killed herself and 2 Israeli civilians on March 29, 2002 by detonating explosives belted to her body. The killings gained widespread international attention due to Ayat's age and gender, and the fact that one of the victims was also a girl. Tashfeen Malik and her husband, Syed Rizwan Farooq, attacked the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino, California on December 2, 2015, killing 14 civilians and injuring at least 22. Farooq was a US citizen at the time of the attack. Hayat Boumediene is currently being sought by the French police as a suspected accomplice to her husband, Emedi Coulibaly, who was the main suspect for the Montrose shooting. In that incident, a municipal police officer, Clarissa Ja Philippe, was shot and killed, and was also the hostage taker and gunman in the Porte de Vincennes siege, in which he killed 4 hostages but was himself killed by the police. So, in this module we have seen that the notion that women can be terrorists or that they can be involved with violence can obviously be contradicted, and all the previous ideas that are held about women can be subverted. This module has discussed how the conventional notions of women being victims to a much greater degree than being perpetrators of violence can also be challenged. The dynamics of gender and power seems to be blurred if we look at the scenario and the role that women are playing in today's contemporary time. Thank you.